Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be breaking down the Thursday, January 24th NBA slate. It's a 4-game slate, so a pretty quick one. We're going to get down into it. Some things that I do on this channel, I go through and I kind of give you guys an early look. And by the time this video gets out there, due to my pretty old and shitty laptop, it's the afternoon, but you guys still have like 7 hours to get this video digested. Ideally, it would be out early in the morning for the early look. But what it does is I'm going to break down the injuries, I'm going to break down the pace, the Vegas dashboards, and just some early interests that I have based on the information that I currently have at this point. So basically like an initial player pool that I'm doing just based off of the information I'm going to be giving you guys and some other things that I looked at. And that player pool is going to shift inevitably due to the NBA having injuries just not be like a procedural thing. You just kind of just get to rule out players. You don't get to play players if you don't want them to after you kind of said they were starting, like with Enes Kanter, and just things like that. So obviously you don't use these player pools or anything like that. It's just kind of an initial look at where I'm liking certain players based on the information that we have right now. With that being said, welcome to the channel. If this is your first time here, I know we're getting a lot of new visitors because of the NBA, right? I've been doing NFL content, some sports betting content. Now I'm jumping over into the NBA since the NFL season is pretty much over outside of the Super Bowl. So I'd appreciate it if this is your first time here. Throughout the video while you're watching it, if you see yourself enjoying the content at all, please hit that like button. Please consider subscribing if you feel like that this is something that is actually helping you and that you come back for more episodes. That allows me to know that the content, the way I'm putting this video out there, NBA wise and the slate, how I'm breaking it down, is good and it's actually informative for you guys. I've gotten some initial good feedback, but I want to know. So one, just let me know if you like the video in the comments below, and also if you do, please consider subscribing and let me know that you subscribe down below. I'll also reach out. I want to get to know everybody in the community, let you know, give you a thank you pretty much. And then the next thing is just that there's a Facebook group down below and a free PDF to how to be more contrarian and just little things and strategy, things that you could do to set yourself apart and be more optimal. So you can download that totally free. Join the Facebook group totally free. We're building a great community in there. So now that the house cleaning stuff's out of the way, let's jump into this slate. So I'm going to start, we're here on the Draftkings dashboard, and if you're somebody who plays on another site, I play on Yahoo a lot. I don't play too much on FanDuel, but their NBA million dollar tournament is pretty good. I think I'm going to start to break down those things a little bit more, maybe in my blog, just because it's a lot to do video-wise on each site. But we're going to do it with Draftkings right now, the most popular site, the most users. And I'll jump right into my PDF for injuries right here. So what we have here, let me just make sure this mic's on because I haven't put that on a couple times. It's on. So injuries, there's not a big laundry list of them. I kept out the obvious ones, guys like LeBron James who have been out and things like that. And I put on some of the ones that are more recent or just question marks, right? Highlighted some of those question marks and some of the bigger question marks. So we have Anthony Davis. He's out. He's out with a hand injury. Probably going to miss at least a week is what they're saying. And who does that impact? So I could have my impacted players you can see right here in this column D. And again, you guys can pause your screen, screenshot this, whatever you want to do. It's also on my blog, which my blog is, jump over that quickly. Daily Fantasy Assists is just my blog, a place where I'm putting my community, a more elaborate way of discussing everything you could see right here. So you can check it out there if you don't want to just pause the video as well. I'll drop the link in the blog is down below. It's going to help, though, with Davis being out, Randall. We saw Okafor. He's gone for back-to-back 40 DK points, double-doubles. A little bit of a tougher matchup tonight for a guy like Okafor, but it's going to help them. It's also going to help Drew Holiday in terms of usage and just where those points in minutes, really. Minutes-wise, it's going to go to Randall Okafor, but points and usage-wise and assists, things like that, is going to go to a guy like Holiday probably, especially with Mirotic also out, which is another guy that we have on here. Earlier in the year, a guy like Mirotic was dominating. It was really the big three with Davis, Mirotic, and Holiday. Now with Mirotic out, you're going to see a lot more usage, a lot more rebounds, really primarily just for Randall and a guy like Okafor. And then you're going to see Holiday have to come up with a lot more assists and really handle a point. Even with a guy like Peyton out there, you're going to see Holiday get a lot of usage at the point. Damian Lillard, by far the biggest question mark on this slate. He came out with a hand injury. Obviously, if he's out, it's going to be probably the Seth Curry show taking over at the point guard position. Should be in line for close to 30 minutes. And at his price, which if we go to Seth Curry at his price point, not Steph, but Seth, $3,200. Almost the minimum on a 4-game slate. If this actually happens and he's ruled in, you're going to see this guy be upwards of maybe 70 to 80% owned. It's just that high on a 4-game slate. When you get value like that, you almost have to play it. And I think there's merit to playing it. But a guy like Curry, who hasn't been seeing many minutes, and obviously that's because Lillard controls the point for the far majority of the game, even when he does see minutes, he's not a guy who's going to score first, right? He's not really a guy who pads the stat sheet. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities to start, though. But, I mean, if you're looking at just what he's done in terms of getting 20 minutes plus, he's not doing too much. I think it's a great position in cash. It's a great position to play, right? 3,200, you get to put a lot of other guys in terms of tournaments, I'm probably going to have a good amount of Curry if he does indeed end up starting. But I think I'm also going to end up fading him, because if he's going to be that highly owned, and at 3,200, it's very hard to fade a guy like this, because for him to 10x value and get you 32 points if he's going to play close to 30 minutes is so likely in this situation. He's going up against Phoenix, though, and if we can jump into the spreadsheet quickly, I have just offenses to target. If you look at Phoenix against the point guard right here, they rank 25th defense against position. It's a great matchup all around. The only thing that's weary is the ownership. You want to think about ownership. If he's going to just say he's 80% owned, say that field, just for easy numbers, has 100 people in it. That means 80 people are going to have him. If he does hit, you're still battling with 80 people to win the top prize. That's hard, especially when it's not 80. It's actually like 80,000 in these big tournaments. But if he doesn't hit and he doesn't do what he really hasn't done all season, and he kind of sticks to who he is, he's going to get you maybe 20 points, which again, at $3,000, he's almost 7xing value. Like, it's hard not to play him at that price point, right? I'm just trying to justify it if you did want to fade him. If he doesn't hit, you're now in that 20% of the field. If he is 80% owned on a 4-game slate, which he very well could be, you're now in that 20% of the field that doesn't have him, and you're competing with only 20,000 people in a 100,000 tournament, or 20 people in a 100-man tournament, which just sets you up just so optimally at that point to win. And also, you're going to have a different lineup construction if you don't play him, because you're not going to be able to get that cheap value, so you'll naturally just be different. Obviously, in cash, he's a great play, like we mentioned. I just think that he's kind of thin, although he only needs to get you 20 points at 3,200, and you're very happy. Definitely something I'm going to monitor throughout the day. And then just the next person that we're going to go on to here is DeAndre Ayton. So Ayton as a center here, he's been a guy who's questionable. He's not really the biggest news on the slate, because he's going to probably be doubtful, more so than questionable. He has a slim chance to play, is what the reports were saying, with an ankle injury. And he's missed their last 3 games, right? And since he's been out, he's not an incredible defender, but since he's been out, their defense has been going down at that position. Holmes has also been out, Rashawn Holmes, somebody that I called Richard Holmes in the past. But you get a guy now in David Bender, or not David Bender, but Dragon Bender, who, if we go over to Bender here, his salary has come up, but not that much. For a guy who's gotten back-to-back double-doubles, right around 30 points, he's still undervalued, if that's what you're going to say is his normal stat line. And in this starting position, if he's going to be getting the start at center, which on Draftkings and really any DFS site, you want the starts at point guard and you want the starts at center, just because point guard, you're going to have a lot more usage in terms of assists, also scoring, and the same thing with center, scoring, but rebounds. So he's getting those easy rebounds, and he's also getting those very easy to make baskets. So if you want to think about NFL, you're going to have short pass attempts. It's easy to convert on those. For the center position, it's just easy to convert on 2 to 3 point shots, or 2 to 3 foot shots. So things like that are why Bender is still a good play at $4,600. Probably would be chalky if Ayton is considered out, which he's more so doubtful than questionable right now, based on the reports. And then you have a guy like Rashawn Holmes, who is also questionable with a foot, probably will end up being out. Or could end up being out, which makes Bender still a great choice, which also makes Josh Jackson, we can see impacted players, a good choice as well. I mean, Josh Jackson, we slide over one more time. I had him in a good amount of lineups, and I ended up pulling him late 2 nights ago once some of the news came out. And it ended up killing me because he went for 50-plus points. His usage with Ayton off the floor, with Holmes off the floor these past 2 games has just been phenomenal. Got in the 30-plus minute points there. That was a blowout win. Maybe you saw in a little bit of extended run. But I do like him today a lot, and I think a lot of people are going to like him. He'll have inflated ownership due to that 50-point game. A lot of people seeing the game logs will be like, oh, I see that happening again. It very well probably won't happen again, but it could happen based on the usage that he's going to be getting out there. Just to finish up injuries quickly so we can move on. Teague at point guard, he's questionable. If he's out, obviously Rondo becomes a lot better of a play here. Wiggins also becomes a lot better of a play. Wiggins is a guy who's just seeing tons of minutes out there and really not doing much with it. Doris Burke called him out for being lazy a couple games ago on TV, as he was literally being lazy. But again, he's $5,600. Can he get you 30 points like he did last game? That's all he needs. And he's a guy who's going to probably average 36 minutes. Pretty good matchup against the Lakers today. We'll look more into the matchup, but Wiggins is a guy who, with Teague out, we'll see a little bit of a usage bump. Even without him out, I like him a lot. He's in my initial player pool that we'll get to. Warren's out. This is a big thing that also impacts a guy like Josh Jackson, because now really he's like the only power forward that they're going to feel comfortable putting out there. They do have Malachi Bridges and Oubre if they want to put him from the small forward to power forward, which I don't see happening. So Josh Jackson's usage looks like it's trending pretty much skyrocketing right now, with Warren with Ayton out and potentially Holmes out. Rondo, the big news on Rondo is that he's questionable, but if he does play, he's going to have no limits restriction, is what Luke Walton said, which I kind of believe him, because the Lakers have been slow with getting guys back, not just LeBron James, but other players on the year. So Rondo coming back, obviously with no Lonzo, means it's the Rondo show at point guard, which at his price point, if you want to go over to Rondo, and potentially not a lot of people playing him if that question mark comes later at that 10:30 game, at his price point of $5,200, he's just an absolute smash play for a guy who, if he just sees 25 minutes in this contest, and that would maybe even be him getting limited minutes, probably should see closer to 30 without Lonzo in there, he should be very easily in that department to go for 30 points, which is right there over 6xing value, and he should potentially be in line for a double-double, even more. Not should, but could. So that's just injury news. Tyus Jones and Jonas Jarabaku, whatever. That was a butchering type of name. I've been told that I'm butchering some of these names. And honestly, that's just what's going to happen. Tyus Jones, though, point guard. Only thing that makes him a little interesting is if his price, one, but if he plays, obviously, and then two, if Teague sits, he should get a little more extended run. And then Jonas, he's out with personal issues. He was seeing about double-digit minutes a game, around 10, 11 minutes a game over the past couple of weeks. So if he's out, that's going to move over to guys like Kevon Looney, over to guys like maybe Damian Lee, Iggy. So if it goes over to Looney, that's interesting to me. It's just something to monitor. Next up, we'll talk about Vegas. So this is what we do, right? We look at the injuries. Those are the biggest things to monitor all day. It's important for you guys to know those. So check them out here. Check them out on the blog so you know. Keep up with them with Fantasy Labs NBA app. All great sources. And then next thing is to kind of figure out Vegas. What is the slate looking like? For this slate, if we want to look at the line, look at the over-under. In terms of over-under, there's some huge games on this slate. We don't have one of the over-unders. That's not out as I'm looking at this yet, at least, probably because of injury news with DeAndre Ayton and Holmes. And that's just going to come out a little later on. But I did project that over-under for 218.5. So that's the smallest over-under on the slate for me. I projected that using both Phoenix's and the Blazers' average points per game, which are right here. Just kind of added them up, basically, and said that's the projected over-under, the best I can do right now, especially factoring in pace, things like that. So we have the other over-unders here, 229 or above for all of them. So we have some high-scoring teams on this slate. We'll also see that we have some high-pace games on this slate. So really, in terms of a four-game slate, I'm going to target all of these games, primarily maybe these over-unders that we have, these 6 teams, these 3 games, because obviously they have a higher point total potentially by 10 plus points, which means I'll target these spots. But in this game with Phoenix, with having some injuries, with Portland, potentially Lillard being out, we have a lot of value opening up. So all these games are going to be targeted by me. This is just a quick dashboard for you guys to look at. The over-unders are the important things. Player props later on, those come out later in the day. Also important. And the line's also important, just to see who's favored. You never want to predict blowouts, is what everybody in the industry, or at least if you're sharp, says, because blowouts, the line can predict those more times than not, but the times that they don't, you could be on the wrong end of the coin. So we do have some pretty high total or pretty wide spreads in these games. 2 of them approaching double digits, 1 of them already there. So just Vegas, quick dashboard. This is what it means. If you want to know more about like what the line means, what the over-under means, and you're watching this and you're not totally sure, I have a video on that. Maybe I'll link it up in a card. If I don't link it up in a card, it's just on my channel under sports betting. It's just the basics to sports betting for beginners. So that's just Vegas. Lots of high totals is the thing to take away from this. Lots of high-scoring teams. If we look at pace now, so I have pace here, and if I want to slide, I have just a bunch of other things that I have in this type of spreadsheet. Once it's finalized, I'm going to put this out there for you guys and update it daily. Basically, it's going to be updated on the blog daily, but also just put it out there so throughout the day I can update it for you guys. But I want to finalize it, make it pretty good, get a lot more information in here. The only main things outside of pace are offensive and defensive efficiency. Those can just be looked up online. It's really just tells you how good the defense is, how good the offense is at scoring per possessions, things like that. But if we want to just look at pace, how many possessions there are in a game, obviously the more possessions, the more points are going to be scored. We have 5 of the top 10 teams in pace on this slate, which makes sense due to those high totals that we just saw on this slate. So in the past, if you had a pace, an average projected game pace, so the projected game pace is just both teams' actual pace, like we see right here, added together and divided by 2. So it's like an average of both teams' pace. If you used to have a projected game pace or both teams' pace added together of 100 or more, that was a game to target in the past. But this year, the average pace in the NBA is 99.5, basically 100. So that break-even target range is now just the average, which is actually crazy. All those teams on this slate are over that for their game pace, their actual pace, and their combined pace. We could see Phoenix and Portland, they have the slowest pace on the slate, and by a good amount, right? Over a whole entire possession per game. Which again, one possession per game might not mean a lot, but that could be 3 points, that could be whatever it might be, an assist, a rebound, especially when you start to break it apart, and this is 3.5 possessions more per game. You're bound to have at least, you're definitely going to have a rebound or a point scored, right? Assists, potentially blocks, whatever it might be, and that's just on average. There could be more. So you want to target these higher paced games, higher total games, and we have a lot of those on this slate. It's a 4-game slate. We could look at all of it. So that's just the main thing with slate. I have the totals here so you guys can just look at it an easier way, looking at both the totals and the pace to see really which ones are those best games to be targeting. And you can see Oklahoma versus New Orleans is the highest total pace and highest total points on the slate. It's also the widest spread on the slate if we go minus 11.5, so that's dangerous, potential blowout territory, but we don't want to just rely just on that. It's mainly because Davis is out, Mirotic's out, they're dealing with some injuries, and they're on the road. Also a back-to-back for them. Just a lot of things not in the favor of the Pelicans tonight. But that's just pace, quick overview, definitely good to know, definitely good to start building your player pool, taking into account Vegas and pace, and injuries are just absolutely key. You have to be doing that if you want to win. Next thing up, this is target offenses. So basically all the offenses on this slate, their opponent, the pace here as well, so you can look at that quickly, the total, just important things, and then how each team's defense is against that position. I highlighted in red the key things to look at. I starred some of the things that might not be good. So if we zoom in here just a little bit, you can see that right here we have, so this one right here, 28th. What this means is that the Pelicans, they're the opponent, they are 28th against the point guard in defense. That's not good. That's why I highlighted it in red. Same thing here with the Wizards. They're 26th against the point guard, so that's good for Steph Curry. In terms of Oklahoma City, that's good for a guy like Russell Westbrook. Now, these are guys that you probably want to play already because they're studs, but it helps you find some of those value plays and see guys who are in a little bit better positions, such as the Suns here, 25th against the point guard. That, like we said earlier, with Lillard out, that makes Steph Curry a little bit more of an attractive play because he has an easy matchup to go along with his value, to go along with him potentially starting. So, all things like that. The reason I star some of these things, because you could see against the shooting guard right here, or maybe we can go, shooting guard, or you can go for the center position. You have the Warriors as the opponent, and they're 22nd against the center. So that doesn't look good on face value, but they also just got back Cousins, who's a pretty good and elite defender at the position. So this is kind of inflated is what I'm saying based on what their team is now with Cousins in the starting lineup. That's sure to go down or improve upon. Same thing here with the Suns being 4th against the shooting guard. A lot has changed for the Suns, right? Booker's been taking over outside. He's left shooting guard. He's gone to point guard, which his defense isn't the greatest. So that's probably a big part of that reason. You have guys like Warren. You have guys like Oubre. Warren's going to be out today, so you can't really take that into account. Oubre hasn't been on the team all year or even the majority of the year. So there's just a lot going into some of these numbers that you can't rely fully on. The same thing can be said right here for small forward, especially for the Suns, the fact that Warren's out today, the fact that Oubre, depending on where he starts, small forward or shooting guard, hasn't been on the team all year. So some of these things shouldn't be taken as face value, but it doesn't just bake in one specific player. It bakes in all the people defending at that position. So on average, or if you want to look at this from a high level, you can take these numbers in usually and trust them, right? The only thing would be things like Cousins coming back all year. That's a big one to kind of point on and not take this number as the Warriors right now. If you play them, or you're going to always have a success. Really, any of these numbers aren't going to be always successful. Like if you play a point guard against a 28th ranked defense, you're going to be in a better position, especially if it's Russell Westbrook like tonight. But it doesn't always mean it's going to hit, but it's also good to know, a good way to kind of differentiate. Playing players against bad defenses is obviously a better situation than playing them against top-notch ones, especially when you're looking for that value play and trying to differentiate and find those small couple of guys who can hit value for you, let you fit in some studs. So these are just the targets. Again, this is on the blog. You can check it out. If you're currently still watching, you're about to hit that 20-minute mark, so I greatly appreciate it. Comment down below that you're still watching at the 20-minute mark. I want to thank you personally, and I want to know, what is your favorite part of these videos so far? Is it the information? Is it me, myself, and I? No, I won't be too humble brag. Is it the information itself? What specific information pays? How is it helping you? Is it reducing your research time? Is it actually making you win money? I want to know all about that below. I actually really do. That's what like kind of keeps me going and lets me want to, or makes me want to keep making these videos, right? Again, gonna check if the mic's on. It is on, thank God. All right, so early interest is just who, based off of all the information we just looked at, and this is what I do through my process in the mornings and late at night, the night before, I just start to list early interest. And it's a lot of players, but relative to this slate, it's a lot, right? 4 games, 8 teams. It's a decent amount of players. But I do break it up since we're looking at DraftKings just as guard, forward, and center because of dual eligibility. So in terms of guard, I like Seth Curry. We've talked about him. If he starts, he's a good play. And then also, CJ McCollum is going to be in a good territory, as well as a guy which will go to forward position. Really, all the Blazers I like if Lillard's out because all their usage is going to be bumped. Evan Turner, I think, is a very sneaky play at his low price point. If we go over to Evan Turner, again, $4,200. You want to get guys and not play a guy like Seth Curry, and you want to pivot elsewhere. Evan Turner is a guy who should see around 25 minutes tonight as long as the game is staying close, which the spread indicates that it should. Should see about 25 minutes tonight, and he is, for the most part, around a point per minute guy, just a little bit under that. So Evan Turner could be a sneaky pivot off a guy like Seth Curry if you wanted to go there. McCollum, I said I like. He'll be kind of maybe that main guy on offense. If Lillard's out, we could see vintage McCollum from a few years back where he was just dropping points every single night. Booker, not a guy that I'm overly excited ever to play because he's really one-dimensional, but since he's been at the point guard position, usage has just shot up through the roof. Assists have been getting up there. And if Ayton's off, he does see a little bit of a usage bump. Since Oubre's been there, it's kind of hurt his numbers a little bit. Booker, though, not a guy I love playing, but he is a guy that's in this early on interest pool. Rose primarily and Wiggins because of Teague being questionable, because of Tyus Jones potentially not playing. Either way, I like both of them. They're both going to see a lot of minutes. Rose will see more if Teague's out. Wiggins just continues to see a ton of minutes. It's just, does he put the ball in the bucket, right? His field goal percentage has been bad for the past few weeks. If he can get that up, seeing 36 minutes, taking how many shots, 15 shots a game, he's going to be absolutely fine. And on a 4-game slate, I kind of want that upside for a guy like Wiggins who can just go absolutely bananas one night. Oubre I like, especially if Ayton's out, especially since Warren's out. He'll draw the start. He'll draw even more minutes in usage. Rondo, probably my favorite play on the slate if we do get word that he's playing, because it's a later game, because a lot of people, he should have lower ownership because of that, because of the question mark around his name. I do believe that he will have no limits restriction if he does play. Westbrook, one of 2 of the best plays on the slate based on his matchup. If we go right back to target offenses, he's playing the 28th ranked. Basically, he's going up against Peyton on the Pelicans, which is an absolute killer matchup for him. He's an absolute stud. We already know all about that. Russell Westbrook should be in your player pool. Curry, for the same reason, has a great matchup. Probably going to go a little bit more under-own these Warriors guys, especially at the point guard position. Westbrook and Curry, one of them is going to go under-owned. I'd imagine it's Curry because Westbrook just draws a lot more attention from fantasy, because you have his brother Seth, who's going to be a value play on this slate. You have guys like Rose, who could potentially garner a lot more ownership if Teague is out. Just all those types of things. I think Curry should go under-owned from a tournament pivot perspective. To quickly go through forward, Josh Jackson, I mentioned how I like him. Bender, I mentioned how he's still underpriced. Bridges is, again, another guy in Phoenix who should see some more usage with Warren out. Interesting play at his price point, which if we look at his price point, $3,700, very interesting play. It's a very easy pivot for $500 more with guard eligibility in Bridges off of a guy like Curry, if that's where you wanted to go. Paul George is an absolute monster, 60-plus points last game. He's probably playing better than Westbrook on the year in terms of field goal percentage. He definitely is. Maybe not on the entire year, but recently at least he's just been going off. Has to be in there for me. Julius Randle and also a guy like Okafor we'll get to at the center position. Both guys who are going to be getting primarily all the rebounding opportunities out there. Randall's probably going to start at the power forward with Okafor at center, which is something I don't like. I'd rather have Randall at the center, increased field goal rate or percentage, just because success percentage, because they're going to be closer to the basket, more offensive rebound situations, defensive rebounds. Rather have him there. That's why I like Okafor a lot. But Randall's still an elite play. Potentially his price has come down if we look at it. It has come down to $7,800. I think it was $84 last night. So it's come down a little bit, and that actually makes him a little easier to digest. At that price point, he has to get you around 40 points. I think he still is a little bit too expensive, especially because going up against OKC, he has a little bit of a better matchup. Not going to be facing primarily up against Steven Adams, a pretty good defender. That'll be Okafor, which does worry me a little bit. But I do think that Randall is still a good play on a 4-game slate. Might be a little too expensive for me on a main slate if there's more teams. Taj Gibson, I love Taj Gibson. He's always cheap. He has a great matchup today. There's not much more I could say about it. I mean, if we want to look at the power forward position, he should draw the start. Power forward position against the Lakers right now, it ranks 26. Whoever starts at power forward, whether it's Kuzma, whether it's Ingram, he should have a pretty good or a pretty easy time handling that. Taj Gibson, always cheap, and he could have those 40-point nights, double-double, 20 points, 10-plus rebound nights pretty easily in this situation, and I like it a lot. Aminu, again, because if Lillard's out, his usage is going to go up. Aminu also has, if we look at the Suns right here for the power forward or the small forward position, whichever one he has a decent matchup, hopefully he just sees the minutes, right? That's been something of a worry for him. Draymond Green, somebody I threw in here, is sort of an ownership pivot. Don't think a lot of guys will be on him. I think his price is a little bit too cheap. If we go over to Draymond in this situation against Washington, going up against whoever it might be, Otto Porter, whoever it might be, $6,000, I think he's very much in line to get you 35 points is what you want out of him. Jeremy Grant, just seeing loads of minutes out there, continues to be too cheap. You have in my notes right here, I have some notes, just underpriced. Pelicans struggle versus the forward position. Looney, we mentioned, with Jonas being out, that's going to increase Looney's minutes, you'd imagine, even if it's just another 3 to 5 minutes. That's going to help Looney, a guy who's been performing actually pretty well, and we're still going to see Cousins on somewhat of a minutes restriction, I imagine. Evan Turner, I talked about it, an easy pivot. Center's pretty straightforward for me tonight. Best matchup on the slate, I'd say, if not Westbrook, I think it's Nurkic or Nurkic. Basically here, it's the fact that if Lillard's out, one, he has the best matchup on the slate in terms of going right to it real quickly. Center position. Suns against the center. They rank 8th if you look at it right here. Now, take into account, though, Ayton's going to be out. That number's a little bit inflated based on a lot of the teams that they played this year at the center position. But Ayton's going to be out in Holmes. Even if Holmes isn't in, I still think that Nurkic's going to have just his way against this team. So I think he's the best player in the slate. Towns, I think, is going to go under own due to some other guys that are on this slate, primarily Russell Westbrook, primarily Steph Curry. I think Towns is also just an incredible play today as well. I don't know if I'll get there in a lot of lineups. And Okafor, we mentioned, has a tough matchup today, right? If we want to go to target offenses once again, the Thunder against centers, they're pretty good. Steven Adams is pretty good. Okafor, though, is coming off of 2 big games. He's going to have a lot of ownership on him. And he's cheap still, right? Okafor is absolutely dirt cheap, and he's easy to fit into your lineups at $4,900. And in that lineup, he has to get you 30 for a guy who's been doing 40-plus the last 2 games, getting double-doubles. Easy shot attempts, rebounds. It's going to be a little harder for him with Steven Adams out there. Potentially, I might look for a spot to fade a guy like Okafor, play more of Julius Randle, play more of Taj Gibson in their situations. Even a guy like Jeremy Grant I like. But I'm not sure on a 4-game slate if I want to take that stand. I'm going to have to look later on and see what happens. So, we're at 28 minutes. Comment down below if you made it all the way through the video. Greatly appreciate it. Hopefully this video gets out there in time. Yesterday we had some problems with the internet. These videos aren't getting out as soon as I'd like, just because the way that my situation's set up, I have to shoot these videos later on in the day after my roommates wake up. I'm trying to figure out places to go to get them out early in the morning by 10 a.m. instead of by noon or 1. But if you made it this far, like the video, please, please, please subscribe. Check out things down below in the description. Check out the blog. Let me know what you think of this video. It really means a lot to me, the feedback, to see what I should improve on, what you're liking, so I can just continue to make those things even better for you guys. So I appreciate it. My name's Sal. Best of luck tonight. Peace.